So Will Smith is getting torn apart from all angles, from the general public, from people like me and people like you watching this video, all over Twitter, and definitely some celebrities, people like Joe Rogan, which we'll talk about in this video. But I've also seen a lot of other celebrities. We already did a video a couple of days ago on Jim Carrey talking about the Will Smith versus Chris Rock situation. And obviously, when it comes to the Will Smith versus Chris Rock situation, most of these celebrities, because a lot of them that are speaking out are in some ways comedians or even just actors, they take special offense to what's going on between Chris Rock and Will Smith. They take special offense because they don't believe that people like Chris Rock should be silenced by people like Will Smith simply because their feelings are hurt, simply because they don't like the words coming out of their mouth. You can't walk out on a stage and slap him in front of not only everyone in the audience, but also everyone who's watching the Oscars. All 10 people watching just kidding. But obviously, whenever something like this happens on live television, on a stage as big as the Oscars, or at least as prestigious as people, I guess, perceive the Oscars to be, it's going to go viral on social media afterwards, even though nobody really watches the Oscars anymore. But let's get into Joe Rogan talking about the Will Smith versus Chris Rock situation. Obviously, I can't play this entire clip, but I will show you everything that Joe Rogan says that's of importance. I'm going to read it off of this article right here in 1 second. But first, I do want to just kind of set the stage and show you some clips, show you a little bit of the actual interview that Joe Rogan was on, so you can kind of get a sense of why Joe Rogan was saying the certain things that he was saying. Let's check it out.
Own up to it.
I don't think he was thinking that far ahead at all.
Oh, maybe he wasn't, but
I think he was
like
being
in this
emotionally
moment,
fragile.
Probably.
And he acted on impulse.
Sure.
And I think it's a foolish impulse that you do when you know there's no consequences.
I
So
don't
you're
think,
hitting
but
a
here's
very
the thing.
small
I'm going to say
person.
that I don't know that he thinks that there's, now, in terms of hitting Chris, in terms of them and their physical differences and capability of combat, let's say, yes.
There's no consequences.
But I'm saying, but there's no consequences in getting out of your seat and striking somebody on national television.
Yeah, but I don't think he was thinking about that. I think he was acting
Simply
impulsively.
in terms of man to man and who's capable and what's capable. And you know what? That may be the case in the microcosm of things. But if you hit anybody for any reason in public at this point, you have the
So pretty much this guy is disagreeing with Joe. Joe is saying that it was emotionally fragile for Will to do what he did to Chris Rock. And I 100% agree. I'll tell you right now why Will Smith did it. I've been thinking about it over the last couple of days, and I know exactly why Will Smith did it. If you think about the people that, Jada cheated on Will Smith with, Tupac in August, and who knows, maybe even more people, I'm not even sure. But if you think about them, they're total opposites of Will Smith. Will Smith is like the good guy, the nice, the guy that shows up at the Oscars and presents himself in a positive way. The guy that, he's not a Tupac. Let's just say that he's not a thug. So what Will Smith is trying to do is he's saying, you know what, maybe Jada just wants a thug, if we're being real, that's why nice guys finish last, man, because all these women want thugs in some sort of way. They want thugs that can also, pay for them financially, take care of them and stuff like that, protect and provide. So Will Smith is like, how can I become the thug? How can I become a Tupac type dude? And that's why he's just not that kind of guy. He's not a thug. He's not the kind of guy that's going to slap someone in the face because they talked about his wife. That's why he originally laughed at the joke that Chris Rock said. And that's why when he got on stage to accept his award later on, that's why he was crying, is because he can't handle things like that. He is just not that guy. He's not a Tupac. He's just not.
a very real fact of all of the powers of law that be, especially depending on who you are and what the public and the cathedral thinks of you, smashing you to death until you're penniless, bankrupt, and everyone hates you.
Stop. That's not going to happen here.
Probably
that's never going to happen.
Probably
He just smacked him.
But
you didn't beat the shit out of him. You didn't harm him.
But,
You smacked him in the face.
So there you go. So Joe Rogan and this guy were disagreeing. Joe was saying that he's not going to go bankrupt. Nothing's really going to happen to Will Smith. There's not going to be any real consequences. And we saw that he went on stage and accepted an Oscar award 20 minutes later, 20 minutes after he slapped Chris Rock on the face on the stage of the Oscars. So that doesn't make any sense. That guy is arguing that there's going to be consequences. Joe is saying there's not going to be consequences. At least consequences bad enough to where Will Smith actually feels it. There might be some consequences. Maybe he's banned from the Oscars for a year, but who really cares, man? The only thing that these people really care about is their money, if we're being real. But let's check out all the things that Joe Rogan said that were of importance. He says, and I think we already saw this in the video that I just showed you, but Joe Rogan says, I think Will Smith was being emotionally fragile and he acted on impulse. I think it's a foolish impulse that you do when you know there's no consequences. So you're hitting a very small person. You don't go sit in the front row. You're a star at the Oscars. There's a professional comedian whose job it is to roast people. That's what he's doing. And what Chris Rock did was not even insulting. It was a mild joke. 100%. It was a very mild joke. And you could even see Chris Rock's reaction after he got slapped and he sat down and Will Smith was yelling at him. You could even see that he was about to say, I could have made a way worse joke, because there's so much material that you could joke about when it comes to Will Smith and Jada. There's so much, and he chose a very mild joke. Will Smith and Jada should have been very grateful that Chris Rock made the joke that he did make, because anyone could make an extremely, you know, a way worse joke than they did, and we saw that on Twitter. Been seeing that on Twitter ever since the event happened. You know, it's honestly getting tiring at this point, but we've been seeing it constantly on Twitter, on every social media. The idea that you think it's smart while wearing a tuxedo to walk onto a stage in front of the world, like literally the world, at one of the biggest award shows on earth, if not the biggest, and smack a comedian for the most mild joke and then sit there quivering saying, "Keep my wife's name out of your mouth," and everybody's just going to sit in there or sit there in the shit that you just took on the table, and you just pulled your pants down and took a shit on the dinner table, and they all just had to sit there and look at that. All right, that was worded really tough, but yeah, he's pretty much saying like, you're very selfish for thinking that it's okay for you to go on stage and do what you did and then force everyone else to just, you know, deal with it. And then you saw a lot of the other actors there, a lot of the other celebrities there. They weren't fans of that, man. Like Zoe Kravitz posted something on I think it was Instagram, where she was saying, you know, she was kind of criticizing Will Smith indirectly a little bit, kind of criticizing the Oscars a little bit for not doing anything in the moment that Will Smith did what he did to Chris Rock. And I can't help but agree with him. You know, I think that if Will Smith is going to be allowed to do stuff like this, not only is that embarrassing for Will Smith, not only is it embarrassing for Chris Rock and the Oscars, but it also sets a precedent for the future. And I know a lot of people have already made the point of it sets the precedent where you can go on stage and assault someone for jokes that they're telling if you're offended by them, but also sets a precedent for the Oscars that if you're a big enough celebrity, you can kind of just do whatever you want, including assault someone on the stage presenting at the Oscars. You can go do that, and there's no consequences. You don't get kicked out. You don't get anything. And a lot of these actors, a lot of these celebrities are like, hold on. This is not only is that embarrassing for the Oscars and for everyone involved in the audience, for Chris Rock and Will Smith, obviously, but it's also very dangerous for the future, because now everyone that's going on stage, they're going to be too scared to tell jokes, especially to fragile people like Will Smith or Jada. They're going to be too scared to tell offensive jokes. Now they're just going to be, you know, unless you're someone, I don't think Chris Rock will ever be scared to tell a joke. I don't care who slaps him in the face. I think that he'll always go tell those offensive jokes if he wants to. But a lot of the other people are going to be very scared because of the no consequences that Will Smith had and the consequences that they had. You know, like, let's be real. Chris Rock suffered a consequence for telling a very mild joke, like Joe Rogan said, and Will Smith suffered zero. And he might get some little consequence here and there. Maybe he'll get banned from the Oscars for a year or two. But that's not, who cares? You know, who cares? I'm sure maybe he'll probably even not be able to win an Oscar for a year or two. Who cares? He assaulted someone on the stage of the Oscars. It's a ridiculous situation. Let me know what you guys think about Joe Rogan's thoughts on the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars stuff. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the link to that will be in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.